take responsibility for the princess's safety from now on, relieving Lily of the task. Athanasia was shocked when Claude smiled at her and only made her more scared. She reflected that she had just seen him smile, but internally she panicked, wishing he would continue ignoring her. She sarcastically thanked him in her thoughts for failing to remember her all this time, hoping he would keep it that way. Claude then announced that from that day forward, Athanasia would enjoy all the luxuries entitled to a princess. Athanasia reflected on the fact that Claude hadn't acknowledged her as his daughter. In the book, he had claimed he never considered Athanasia his daughter, so she was puzzled about his intentions now. Lily hugged her, assuring her that it would be all right, though she trembled as she spoke. Athanasia hoped Lily was right. As time passed, she continued to wonder about Claude's true thoughts and feelings. Since that day, nothing changed between Athanasia and Claude. Claude remarked that she seemed to have put on more weight since he last saw her. Athanasia internally denied it vehemently, noting they had just seen each other 5 days ago. However, outwardly she acted naive and replied calling him daddy. Lily was scared by her response, and Felix appeared nervous. Claude remained silent in response. Athanasia reflected on the 2 additional occasions she had seen Claude, where they spent what she sarcastically referred to as quality father and daughter time together, which she found terrifying. During these encounters, she realized that no matter how rude or offensive she acted towards him, Claude never attempted to harm her. Instead, he became colder when she acted scared or gave predictable answers, which frightened her even more. Trembling with fear, she felt like she might collapse at any moment due to her intense fear. When Claude abruptly instructed her to follow him, Athanasia felt a wave of relief and thought to herself that she had survived. She concluded that Claude must appreciate people who are assertive and come on strong. Lily and Felix also felt relieved at the turn of events. Claude mentioned he was about to go boating and instructed everyone to prepare for the outing. Lily hesitated, informing Claude that Athanasia wasn't accustomed to bodies of water. Claude dismissed her concern, stating Athanasia would be with him, so there was no need to worry. Internally, Athanasia cursed Claude, feeling scared as she nervously grabbed onto Lily's clothes for support. Despite Lily's continued hesitation, Claude asked Athanasia directly if she wanted to join him. Athanasia, seeing no other option, forced a smile and pretended to agree, stating she wanted to go with him. Claude responded with a simple, "Is that so?" Claude lifted Athanasia into the boat, causing her to release a breath she had been holding and feel drained. As the boat began to glide through the water, Athanasia marveled at its smooth movement and wondered if all boats for the imperial family were like this. She questioned how the boat was moving without anyone rowing it. Claude noticed her contemplative expression and asked what was on her mind. Athanasia felt anxious and not wanting to engage with him. She struggled to decide how to respond, debating between commenting on the beautiful day or the lovely lake. Athanasia replied to Claude by complimenting his hair, calling it sparkly and pretty, and expressing her fondness for shiny things. Internally, she acknowledged that his hair was indeed attractive, resembling honey-colored locks. She mused whether her obsession with gold stemmed from her impoverished past life. Claude smiled at her compliment, causing Athanasia to flinch nervously. He brought up the bags of jewels she had with her on the day they met. Athanasia was at a loss for words, feeling blank and unsure how to respond. Claude then stated he had been keeping the jewels safe for her, inviting her to collect them the next time she visited. Reflecting on his words, Athanasia wondered why she had a sinking feeling that a peaceful death might not be in her future. Athanasia stared at Claude and reflected on his attire, pondering its origins, possibly from Egypt, Greece, or the Middle East, and how well it suited him. Despite herself, she acknowledged his attractiveness, comparing him to a leisurely sunning leopard. She resisted admitting it openly, but noted he exuded a captivating and intense aura, the type that drew women to him like moths to a flame. Athanasia remembered reading about Diana's genuine love for Claude in a supplementary side story for Lovely Princess. Curiously, she wondered if her eyes were the same color as his. As Athanasia noticed something in the lake, she wondered aloud what it could be and expressed surprise at the blue color. She realized it was the lake itself that appeared blue, with the lotus flower petals transparent. She expressed her desire to have one. Trying to reach the lotus, she struggled, feeling she was almost there but then fell into the water. As she began to drown, she panicked, asking herself what was happening and calling for help. Claude, with an emotionless expression, watched her struggle. Athanasia, shocked and scared, thought to herself that he wouldn't rescue her, resigning herself to sinking in silence. Despite this, she couldn't help but angrily curse him for not helping her. Claude rescues Athanasia from drowning in the lake and pulls her ashore. Athanasia coughs in fear. Lily, looking worried, exclaims about Athanasia's condition. Claude addresses Felix and instructs him to teach Athanasia how to swim starting the next day, commenting that it would be embarrassing if his daughter drowned in a mere lake. He then leaves the scene. Athanasia continues coughing, visibly scared. Lily tries to reassure her, saying everything is fine now. Athanasia trembles as she watches Claude leave and bursts into tears. Athanasia lay in bed in her room, still coughing. She reflected on Claude, feeling disturbed by his cold stare when she fell into the lake. Goosebumps ran down her spine as she thought about scraping together as much gold as she could and disappearing as soon as possible. She dismissed her previous plans, unsure how she could ever charm such a ruthless man. Sobbing softly, she expressed a sudden craving for chocolate. Leaving her room in search of it, she walked unsteadily, pondering aloud why she couldn't resist this compulsive desire for sweets. Recalling her past life, she contrasted her current situation with days when she could only afford a few expired convenience store onigiri to satisfy her hunger, making even the thought of treats like chocolate a distant luxury. Athanasia reached for a chocolate bowl but suddenly felt someone behind her. She turned around and was startled when someone grabbed her hand. It was Lily, urgently telling her that she must come outside immediately. Athanasia looked puzzled. All the maids curtsied, expressing their honor to serve Princess Athanasia. Athanasia was stunned, reflecting on what was happening. Felix knelt before her, introducing himself as her humble servant appointed by His Majesty to act as her interim guard from that day onward. Lily hesitated, expressing gratitude for the king's generosity but uncertain about accepting Felix's service. Athanasia thought about Felix, feeling conflicted and questioning his sincerity, especially remembering how he ignored her when she fell into the lake. Despite her reservations, Felix beamed with pride. Felix stated that regardless of the circumstances, he was sent because the king deeply cared for Princess Athanasia. Lily responded hesitantly. The maids were confused by Felix's statement, wondering what he meant by whatever the case. Felix explained that the king was still deciding on a permanent guard for Athanasia, implying he wouldn't stay long. He expressed eagerness to serve her. Athanasia pouted, expressing her desire to see Hannah and C's. Felix assured her she could see them again, suggesting it might be around 10 days later when they could meet. Athanasia felt angry as she reflected on Claude's actions. She thought he had sent additional palace staff, but instead he had simply replaced the existing maids with new ones. The familiar ladies she knew had already been assigned to other palaces, which disappointed her. Additionally, the new maids showed complete indifference to her attempts to win them over with her cutesy demeanor. She had invested so much time in gaining the trust of the previous servants, only to have them replaced. She questioned Claude's motives, wondering why he hadn't taken action when the maids were causing trouble at the Ruby Palace, yet now he was making these changes. Felix tried to calm Princess Athanasia, suggesting she discuss her concerns with His Majesty. Athanasia and Lily reacted with anger to his suggestion. Felix then mentioned that His Majesty had requested Athanasia dine with him that evening. This news further infuriated Athanasia and Lily, who instantly disappeared from his sight. Athanasia became anxious, reflecting on her situation. She wondered if she might have better luck in a future life. According to Felix, the lotus flowers in the middle of the lake were magical creatures that enticed humans with their beauty, then drained them of their vitality. Enraged, she thought about Claude, accusing him of knowing this but choosing not to help her. Lily suggested to Princess Athanasia that she should change her approach. Athanasia refused outright, reflecting that she wouldn't dress up for Claude. Lily urged Felix to say something. Felix smiled and complimented Athanasia, stating that she was lovely regardless of her attire, and he believed His Majesty would agree. Athanasia was shocked by this revelation. Lily conceded to Felix's opinion. Athanasia thought to herself in disbelief, questioning whether Lily truly believed Claude felt that way. Felix lifted Athanasia up, prompting her to wave her hand, indicating she would return soon. Lily bid farewell, saying she would see Athanasia shortly. At Claude's palace, outside his room, Felix informed His Majesty that Princess Athanasia had arrived. Athanasia asked Felix why there weren't any other guards or maids in her father's palace. Felix explained that the palace was devoid of staff because the king preferred to handle everything himself. As for why there were no other knights guarding the palace, Felix stated it was because there was no need for additional protection. Athanasia looked puzzled. Felix also mentioned that she should not address him as Mr., but rather as Felix or Robane, and she could be informal with him. Athanasia agreed to this. Receiving no response, Felix assumed His Majesty was napping. Athanasia reflected on being summoned only for Claude to be taking a nap, finding it either rude or perhaps a fortunate turn of events. She saw an opportunity to avoid meeting Claude and expressed her desire to return. Felix suggested an alternative, offering to let her go inside instead. This suggestion made Athanasia anxious. Reluctantly, Felix opened Claude's room door for Athanasia to enter, hinting that Claude would be delighted if she woke him. Athanasia hesitated, clearly reluctant. Felix assured her he would wait outside. Athanasia stood in Claude's room, feeling completely scared. She tried to open the door to leave but couldn't. Concerned that Claude might have been awakened by the noise she made entering, she decided to stay quiet like a mouse. She speculated that he might come in to check on things if the room remained quiet. Wondering aloud, she noted the sparse furnishings in the bedroom and criticized the bed's placement facing the door for bad feng shui. She recalled stories of the previous emperor's lavish spending on luxuries and questioned if this was truly the emperor's palace. Suddenly, she noticed a large gold painting on the wall and gasped in awe, realizing that this indeed was the emperor's palace, unlike anything she had ever seen in her current or past lives. Athanasia reflected on the large gold painting, imagining how having one herself would render golden candlesticks and rattles unnecessary. She wondered if all the frames on the walls were also gold. Observing the entire wall adorned with gold-framed paintings, she exclaimed in delight, expressing her love for them. Suddenly, she noticed another gold-framed painting of a woman, but its glass was broken. She stared uncomfortably at the painting, recognizing who it depicted. Then she noticed Claude sleeping on the sofa, which sent chills down her spine. She questioned why he wasn't in his bed and why he chose to nap there instead. Athanasia stared at Claude, reflecting on how he slept like a prince from a fairy tale and admitting he wasn't bad-looking in this state. She waved her hand in front of his face, realizing he was deeply asleep. Suddenly, she clenched her fists, considering whether to punch him, seeing it as an opportunity to retaliate for everything, including the incident at the lake. With both fists raised high, Athanasia aimed a punch at Claude, declaring, "Here comes a whammy." However, just as she swung, a piece of chocolate from her sleeve accidentally flew out and hit Claude on the forehead, startling her. Claude opened his eyes and glanced at her, catching her by surprise. Athanasia feigned singing a lullaby to Claude to avoid arousing suspicion. She couldn't believe her actions, questioning herself internally. Feeling embarrassed, she reflected on the expression she must have had with her arms raised, worrying she might have looked like a serial killer. Claude asked about the song she sang. Athanasia replied, explaining it was a lullaby to chase away bad dreams. She reflected on Claude's lack of familiarity with the lullaby, surprised that he, as an imperial citizen, didn't know how it went. Athanasia beamed and greeted Claude with "Good morning, Daddy," but he corrected her, stating it was not morning. She quickly adjusted, saying, "Good evening, Daddy." Internally, she criticized him for not letting it slide. Claude asked if Felix had let her in. Athanasia was stunned by Claude's body structure. He decided to have dinner brought to the room. Realizing the situation, Athanasia looked away.